قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, ولا متركب, nor is he at all composed or constructed or compound. SharH, the explanation is أنه تبارك وتعالى منزه عن أن يكون متركبا من أجزاء, that he, the glorified and exalted, is clear from being composed of pieces. لأن هذا يوجب الاحتجاج المنافي للقدم, because this dictates requirements, and requirement is contrary to eternality, is incompatible with eternality, beginninglessness. فما له أجزاء يسمى باعتبار تأليفه منها متركبا. And so anything that has pieces or components is called, by considering the fact that it is unified, by the fact that it is composed, put together, yani. Mutarakkiba, constructed, or composed, or compounded. وَبِاعْتِبَارٍ حِلَالِهِ إِلَيْهَا, and by considering its dispersal into the pieces that formed it. It's called مُتَبَعِّضًا وَمُتَجَزِّئًا, portioned and pieced. فائدة, benefit. قال سيف الدين الآمدي في كتاب غاية المرام في علم الكلام. Sayfuddin Al-Amidi said in the book Ghayatul Maram fi ilmi al-kalam, ma nassuhu, quote, فَالرَّأْيُ الْحَقُّ وَالسَّبِيلُ الصِّدْقُ وَالْأَقْرَبُ إِلَى التَّحْقِيقِ أَنْ يُقَالَ. He says, the right opinion and the truthful way and the closest to accuracy is that it be said, لو جاز قيام الحوادث به لم يخلو عند اتصافه بها إما أن توجب له نقصا أو كمالا أو لا نقص أو لا نقص ولا كمال. He says, had it been valid that something could happen to God, I could say, had it been valid that occurrences take place within him, but that boils down to meaning something happens to him, since nothing happens to God. So had it been possible that something could happen to God, then it's necessary, it's unavoidable that upon being attributed with something happening to him, that either this dictates deficiency for him, that what happened to him took away from him, or it dictates completion for him or perfection for him, that what happened to him bettered him, or neither any deficiency nor perfection. What happened to him didn't take away from him nor add to him, or yani not add to, but perfect him. لا جائز أن يقال بكونها غير موجبة للكمال ولا النقصان. Now, it's not possible out of these three options, so either it takes away from him, or perfects him, or none of the above. Three cases. He says, لا جائز أن يقال بكونها غير موجبة للكمال ولا النقصان. It's not possible to be said that it's none of the above, that it neither dictates perfection nor deficiency. فإن وجود الشيء بالنسبة إلى نفسه أشرف له من عدمه, because a thing in and of itself, by considering its mere existence, yani comparing a thing's existence to its non-existence. So the thing itself, it looks like it's saying comparing the thing to itself. Comparing the thing to itself, but you don't compare something to itself. Comparison means itself that there are two, at least. That there's more than one. Comparison dictates more than one. So the statement itself literally appears to me that he's saying, when you compare a thing to itself, that it's nobler for it to exist than for it to be non-existent. When you compare a thing to itself, it's nobler for it to be existent than to be non-existent. But I'm not going to say it that way. فَإِنَّ وُجُودَ الشَّيْءِ بِالنِّسْبَةِ إِلَى نَفْسِهِ أَشْرَفُ لَهُ مِنْ عَدَمِهِ. I'd rather say it this way. For indeed, a thing's existence compared to its non-existence, so these are the two being compared. A thing's existence compared to its non-existence is nobler. Yani, what he's saying is, existence is nobler than non-existence. Something is better than nothing. So the option of none of the above, that neither dictates perfection nor deficiency, this doesn't work, because if something exists, then just the fact that it exists is nobler. For itself, that is, for its mere self, is nobler than its non-existence. فما اتصف بوجود الشيء له وهو مما لا يوجب فوات الموصوف ولا فوات كمال له وبالجملة لا يوجب له نقصا فلا محالة أن اتصافه بوجود ذلك الوصف أولى من اتصافه بعدمه لضرورة كون العدم في نفسه مشروفا بالنسبة إلى مقابله من الوجود. He says, so anything that is attributed with something existent, anything that's attributed with some existent thing, some existent attribute that it has, and this existent attribute, it doesn't dictate lessening this attributed one, nor does it dictate perfecting this attributed one. So, then in general, does not dictate deficiency for this attributed one, right? So, doesn't, this means, what he's saying is, so if something were attributed with something existing, and this attribute doesn't take away from the attributed one, and it doesn't add to the attributed one, which means then that this attribute is not deficiency for this attributed one. فلا محالة أن اتصافه بوجود ذلك الوصف له أولى من اتصافه بعدمه. Then actually it's not an option that his being attributed with that description, yani, then it is necessary that his being attributed with that description is better for him than not being attributed with it. لضرورة كون العدم في نفسه مشروفا بالنسبة إلى مقابله من الوجود. Just for the fact that non-existence is in itself necessarily inferior to existence, to what's contrary to it. Non-existence is in itself inferior to its opposite, which is existence. وَالْوُجُودُ أَشْرَفُ مِنْهُ, and existence is nobler than non-existence in itself. Just comparing these two only. Existence versus non-existence. Those are the two issues. While neither of these two take away from that thing itself. من غير أن يوجب له في ذاته نقصا. Okay, so up till there it's very clear. وما اتصف بأشرف الأمرين. Anything that's attributed with the nobler of two things. من غير أن يوجب له في ذاته نقصا. Anything attributed with the nobler of two things. Having or lacking. So which one is nobler, having or lacking? Anything that's attributed with the nobler of two things. من غير أن يوجب له في ذاته نقصا. Without that nobler thing taking away from him. Without that nobler thing being deficiency for him. تكون نسبة الوجود إليه فيما يرجع إلى النقص والكمال على نحو نسبة مقابله من العدم. The translation for this sentence is not coming to me very well. I'm going to keep moving here. But I think it's not going to miss us, because if I understand right, it really is repetitive. So I'm just going to back up, make sure everything's clear here. So Al-Amidi, he said, the right opinion and the truthful way and what's closest to accuracy is that it be said, had it been valid that something could happen to God, then it would be inevitable or unavoidable when he's attributed with this thing happening to him, that either it dictates for him deficiency or perfection or neither. So it's three options here. Three mental options. So he wants to exclude something. You know how we say if there were two creators and either and they both willed for two opposite things in the same subject, then either one of their wills would happen or both of their wills would happen or neither will would happen. So those are your options when you break it down. So this is what he's saying. He's saying if something could happen to God, then what happened to him would either take away from him or perfect him or neither. It's not possible that it's neither. It's not possible that it would be none of the above. Now he wants to explain why. Because the existence of something is nobler for that thing than its non-existence. Yani, because existence in itself is nobler than non-existence. فَمَا اتصف بوجود الشيء له. So anything that has an attribute existing. وَهُوَ مِمَّا لَا يُوجِبُ فَوَاتَ الْمَوْصُوفِ. And this attribute that it has doesn't take away from it. وَلَا فَوَاتَ كَمَالٍ لَهِ. And doesn't negate excellence for it. وَبِالْجُمْلَةِ لَا يُوجِبُ لَهُ نَقْصًا. And so then, it's not a deficiency for this thing. فلا محالة أن اتصافه بوجود ذلك الوصف له أولى من اتصافه بعدمه. Then it's definitely the case that being attributed with that description is better than not. لضرورة كون العدم في نفسه مشروفا بالنسبة إلى مقابله من الوجود. Because of non-existence being inferior to existence. Because of non-existence being inferior to its opposite, which is existence. وَالْوُجُودُ أَشْرَفُ مِنْهُ. And existence is nobler than non-existence. وَمَا اتصف بأشرف الأمرين من غير أن يوجب له في ذاته نقصا. And anything that has a nobler attribute, anything that has an attribute that's nobler than its opposite, تكون نسبة الوجود إليه فيما يرجع إلى النقص والكمال على نحو نسبة مقابله من العدم. Then having this attribute when it comes to deficiency or perfection, which one we're going to confirm, deficiency or perfection, then having this attribute would go back to whichever one is nobler, having it or lacking it. ولا محالة. So let me know if that's not clear for you. ولا محالة أن كانت نسبته إلى وجود ذلك الوصف أشرف منه بالنسبة إلى عدمه. And it is definitive that having this nobler attribute is better than not. Having would be better than lacking. ولا جائز أن يقال إنها موجبة لكماله وإلا لوجب قدمها. And it's not valid to say that this thing that happened to God would be indicative of his perfection. Why not? وَإِلَّا لَوَجَبَ قِدَمُهَا. Because if it were indicative of his perfection, then it would be necessary that he would have been attributed with that eternally, and not that it's something that happened to him. لضرورة ألا يكون البارئ ناقصا محتاجا إلى ناحية كمال في حال عدمها. Because of the necessity that the Creator would not be deficient and needy when it comes to perfection, because of not having this attribute. فبقي أن يكون اتصافه بها مما يوجب القول بنقصه بالنسبة إلى حاله قبل أن يتصف بها. So then, all that's left is that his being attributed with this thing that happened to him would dictate saying that he is deficient for not being attributed with it before. وبالنسبة إلى ما لم يتصف بها من الموجودات. And for not having other attributes that exist. ومحال أن يكون الخالق مشروفا أو ناقصا بالنسبة إلى المخلوق. And it's impossible that the Creator would be inferior to or deficient in comparison to the creation. ولا من جهة ما, nor in any way. كما مضى, like what passed already. انتهى. So what happened here? Al-Amidi, in terms of his wording, he stepped it up. So became not easy to process what he's saying. So let's try it again. First of all, let me explain to you what he's saying. What he's saying is, if someone were to claim that something happened to God, then either whatever happened to him was imperfection for him, yani made him less, or whatever happened to him made him perfect, or neither. So those are our three options. What he wants to get at is to say the only thing that it really could be is that it makes him imperfect. That if something happens to God, it would make him imperfect. That's what he wants to get at. And he wants to exclude the other two. He wants to exclude saying that if something happened to God, then maybe it made him better or perfect, or maybe neither better nor worse. He wants to say, no, actually, if something were to happen to God, that would mean that it made him worse. Not better and not neither. So he's saying, when it comes to neither, that can't be the case. Because neither would mean not lacking nor having. Neither lacking nor having. He's saying, but having is better than lacking. With the meaning that existence is better than non-existence. So if something happened to him, so he acquired an attribute, and it was said that this attribute neither made him worse nor made him perfect. Neither. Then he's saying, then just by virtue of existing, this thing existing, that's better than not existing. If this thing is in itself not making the one who has it, if this attribute is in itself not making the one who has it worse. Meaning, if you say it's neither, doesn't make him better, doesn't make it worse, then that means it doesn't make him worse. So if it doesn't make him worse, then that's still better than not having it, because having is better than lacking. Existence is better than non-existence. So then, if this is the case, then neither is an invalid option. So that's my attempt to simplify what he's saying. So all that's left then is that if something happened to God, then either it made him better or it made him worse. Yani, yes, hakadha. It improved him or it decreased him. If something happened to him, either it improved him or decreased him. He says, وَلَا جَائِزَ أَنْ يُقَالَ إِنَّهَا مُوجِبَةٌ لِكَمَالِهِ. And it's not possible that it be said that it increases him. Now I'm just trying to retranslate it in simple words. I was trying to be very literal. I'm going to try to just say it simply here. وَلَا جَائِزَ أَنْ يُقَالَ إِنَّهَا مُوجِبَةٌ لِكَمَالِهِ. And it's not possible to say that it increased him. وَإِلَّا لَوَجَبَ قِدَمُهَا. Yani, that it made him perfect or contributes to his perfection. Or else, then it would have been necessary that this be eternal, so that he would be perfect in eternity. لِضَرُورَةِ أَلَّا يَكُونَ الْبَارِئُ نَاقِصًا مُحْتَاجًا إِلَى نَاحِيَةِ كَمَالٍ فِي حَالِ عَدَمِهَا. So that it wouldn't be said that God is deficient and needy because of not having this which contributes to his perfection. فبقي أن يكون اتصافه بها مما يوجب القول بنقصه بالنسبة إلى حاله قبل أن يتصف بها. So all that's left then is that being attributed with whatever happened to him would, supposedly happen to him, would dictate that takes away from him, that it's deficiency for him. بالنسبة إلى حاله قبل أن يتصف بها. In comparison to his status before having this thing that happened to him. وبالنسبة إلى ما لم يتصف بها من الموجودات. And in comparison to, or in relation to anything else, any other existing being that doesn't have that attribute. وَمُحَالٌ أَنْ يَكُونَ الْخَالِقُ مَشْرُوفًا. It's impossible that the Creator would be inferior, أو ناقصا, or that he would be deficient بالنسبة إلى المخلوق, in comparison to a creation. ولا من جهة ما, nor from any other perspective. كما مضى, like what already came. So I'm going to read that one more time. Let's try it again. Bismillah. So the Shaykh says, Fa'ida, benefit. Qala Sayfuddin al-Amidi. Sayfuddin al-Amidi said, Fi kitabi ghayati al-maram, fi ilmi al-kalam. In this book of his that I just named for you. Ma nasuhu, quote. So I'll read the Arabic, but I'll try to keep the translation simple and not be very literal, so it can be understood. فَالرَّأْيُ الْحَقُّ وَالسَّبِيلُ الصِّدْقُ. So the right opinion and the honest way. وَالْأَقْرَبُ إِلَى التَّحْقِيقِ. And what's closer to exactness. And yuqal, is that it be said, لَوْ جَازَ قِيَامُ الْحَوَادِثِ بِهِ. Had it been possible that something could happen to God, لم يخلو عند اتصافه بها إما أن توجب له نقصا أو كمالا أو لا نقص ولا كمال. أو لا نقص ولا كمال. Then it's necessary that this makes way for three options mentally. That either what happened to him made him better, or what happened to him made him worse, or what happened to him did neither. لا جائز أن يقال بكونها غير موجبة للكمال ولا النقصان. And it's not valid to say that it didn't do either. That whatever happened to him didn't do either. Neither made him better nor worse. فإن وجود الشيء بالنسبة إلى نفسه أشرف له من عدمه. Because it is nobler for a thing to have existence than not. Yani, a thing that could exist or not exist, it could have being or not, then having being is better than not. فما اتصف بوجود الشيء له وهو مما لا يوجب فوات الموصوف ولا فوات كمال له. So anything that has a description, and this description, or anything that has an attribute, and this attribute doesn't take away from it, and this attribute doesn't make it imperfect. وَبِالْجُمْلَةِ لَا يُوجِبُ لَهُ نَقْصًا. So in general, this attribute is not deficient for this one that has it. فلا محالة أن اتصافه بوجود ذلك الوصف له أولى من اتصافه بعدمه. Then, in this case, it is necessary that having such an attribute would be better actually than not having it. لضرورة كون العدم في نفسه مشروفا بالنسبة إلى مقابله من الوجود. Because of lacking being inferior to having. Because of the necessity of lacking being inferior to having. والوجود أشرف منه. وما اتصف بأشرف الأمرين من غير أن يوجب له في ذاته نقصا تكون نسبة الوجود إليه فيما يرجع إلى النقص والكمال على نحو نسبة مقابله من العدم. So if something has an attribute, if something happened to something, if something happened to someone, and so then what happened to him is an attribute of his. He has now an attribute. Something happened to him. Then when it comes to judging this thing that happened to him being better or worse, that would go back to which one is nobler, having or lacking. And we're saying here, and if it was the case that having it doesn't take away from him, then still having it is better than lacking it, because having is better than lacking in itself. That's what he's saying. ولا محالة أن كانت نسبته إلى وجود ذلك الوصف أشرف منه بالنسبة إلى عدمه ولا جائز أن يقال إنها موجبة لكماله. So now he's done debunking that it could be neither. So what's left? That it makes the one better or worse. ولا جائز أن يقال إنها موجبة لكماله. And it's not possible to say that it's indicative of his perfection. وإلا لوجب قدمها. Because if this thing is indicative of his perfection, and we're talking about God, so if something were to happen to God, and this thing that happened to him is indicative of his perfection, then it would really then be necessary that he always was attributed with it in eternity. لضرورة ألا يكون البارئ ناقصا محتاجا إلى ناحية كمال في حال عدمها. For the necessity that the Creator would not be deficient in eternity for lacking this attribute. That's a loose translation. فبقي أن يكون اتصافه بها مما يوجب القول بنقصه بالنسبة إلى حاله قبل أن يتصف بها. So all that's left then is that for something to happen to God is indicative of being an imperfection for him. بالنسبة إلى حاله قبل أن يتصف بها. Because, yani, for something to happen to God would then necessarily be indicative of imperfection for him, because of comparing him to this case as opposed to his attribute before this thing happened to him. This is, we're supposing only. Supposing something happened to him, to God, then this, whatever happened to him, would necessarily be indicative of imperfection for God. Because if it's supposed to be perfection for him, then when he didn't have it, it would mean that he was imperfect. So if it were indicative of perfection for him, then he should have had it in eternity. And if he didn't have it in eternity, means he was imperfect in eternity. Then something happened to him and he became perfect. So now when you compare the two states, it means in one state he was imperfect. So by saying something happened to him that was perfection for him, means really you are confirming imperfection for God. وبالنسبة إلى ما لم يتصف بها من الموجودات. And in comparison to any created beings that don't have this attribute. ومحال أن يكون الخالق مشروفا أو ناقصا بالنسبة إلى المخلوق. And it's impossible that the creator could be compared to a creation and then deemed worse. ولا من جهة ما, nor in any other way. كما مضى, as previously mentioned. So how's that? Is that maybe better? Do you have a question? So what are we saying? We're saying, if someone claimed that something happened to God, then either this means he got better or he got worse or neither. And it can't be neither. Because if we say he didn't get better or worse, but it did happen to him, then this would mean he's attributed with something. And being attributed with something is better than not being attributed with something. So then it is better just by virtue of having being better than lacking. So neither is not an option. So then what's left? Either it made him better or worse. If you say it made him worse, then means you're saying God has deficiency. And if you say it made him better, then you're saying that means you're still confirming imperfection for him, which was his case prior to this thing that happened to him. So it is valid then what we say, which is if something happens to God, that either means he got better or worse. And either way, this is imperfection for God. To say he got better or got worse confirms imperfection for God. So it's not valid to say that he changes. And this is actually a very important argument here. Yani, this argument, we found it wordy, but if we think about it and dwell on it and process it, we could simplify it, inshallah. And I actually did encounter a person years ago, many years ago, even I think I wasn't even 20 years old yet. And this person made this argument for me, and I didn't at that time have this argument. So I wasn't able to convince that person. When I told that person, if God were to change, it means he got better or worse. So that person said, maybe it was neither. And then I said something to the person, but they were like, it's like, it's not really, whatever you're saying to me is not really, it's not really convincing to me. So this is an important argument here. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, ولا متناه, nor is he limited, meaning nor is he someone who has extents or edges. SharH, the explanation is ذلك لأن التناهي من صفات المقادير, that this is because endings, limitations, borders, edges is amongst the attributes of measurements. Wal a'dad, and counts, numbers. Wallahu muta'alin an dhalik. Wallahu muta'alin. Not muta'alun. Muta'alin. Because there's a ya there originally. Wallahu muta'alin an dhalik. And Allah is exalted from that. فَهُوَ مُنَزَّهٌ عَنِ التَّنَاهِ. And so he is exalted, cleared from edges, limits, etc. قال المؤلف رحمه الله ولا يوصف بالماهية. And nor is he attributed with typicality or species, having a type or a kind. SharH, the explanation is أنه تعالى لا يوصف بالمجانسة للأشياء. That he, exalted as he, is not attributed with being a kind of anything or being a type of anything. وذلك مأخوذ من قولهم ما هو. And this mahiyah or mahiyah, this mahiyah that we're denying from Allah Ta'ala is taken from the Arabs saying about something. Min ay jinsin hu. When they want to know what type of thing it is, they say ma hu. What is it? That's if it were masculine. If it were feminine, they'd say ma hi. What is it? So there's a word here. Al-Mahiyyah. He doesn't have a Mahiyyah. That is like to say, he doesn't have a what kind of thing is he? He doesn't have a what kind of thing is he? That's what it's saying. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, ولا بالكيفية, nor is he at all attributed with a how or a modality or a mode or a way or a fashion or any schematics or stats or statistics. Or a howness. So it means there's no way about him. When we say he doesn't have a how, that means there's no how about him. There's no way about him. There's no mode for him. He doesn't have any schematics. He doesn't have any statistics. SharH, the explanation, أن الله تعالى منزه عن الكيفية, is that Allah, exalted as he, is clear of modality, howness. وَمُرَادُهُ بِالْكَيْفِيَّةِ, and what he means by modality is ما كان من نحو اللون والطعم والرائحة والحرارة والبرودة والرطوبة واليبوسة, having anything like color, flavor, smell, warmth, coolness, moisture, dryness. مما هو من صفات الأجسام وتوابع التركيب, concerning those things that are attributes of bodies and things that exist by extension of composition. Things that exist by extension of composition. What does that mean? things that exist by extension of composition. Yani, what composition implies. He's clear of anything that composition would imply. Maybe I can give you an example. Just something comes to my mind quickly here. If someone said to you, I looked out the window, what might this imply for you? I'm curious what your answer would be. If someone said to you, I looked out the window, what might this imply for you? Does this imply anything for you? Now, maybe I have an answer that's correct, that's other than what's on my mind, but I'm curious your response to me. That he has eyes, okay. Not about himself, though. That he was inside, okay. Yeah, could be there. Or maybe there's something else, though. Even stronger than him being inside, I think. That he saw the outside. Okay, so what's in my mind is that there's a wall. If you looked out the window, means there's a wall. What do you think? As if I'm saying here, if there is a window, there must have been a wall. That's basically surrounding that window, encompassing that window. Good. So you say I was thinking the same thing, but I thought it was too obvious. So good. Hakada. So that's where my mind was there with that example. So this is what he means when he says, وَمُرَادُهُ بِالْكَيْفِيَّةِ مَا كَانَ مِنْ نَحْوِ يعني ومراده بالكيفية ما هو من صفات الأجسام وتوابع التركيب. What he means by modality is what's amongst the attributes of bodies and what exists by extension of composition, or what composition implies. What composition implies. So all of that is the kayf. That's the how, the mode, the way it is. I hope that's clear for you. So I think this is a good spot to stop. Tayyib, do you have any question I can answer for you? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Explain again about he's neither.
Yes. Okay. So if someone says something happened to God, that means God changed. Someone said God changed. Or he said something happened to him. Or that creations dwell within him. Or something like this. Then what would this mean? This would mean that either he got better, or he got worse, or neither of those two. Now, as for saying neither of those two, we say, no, that can't be the case. Because if it's neither made him better nor worse, then this would mean that he changed, and this change didn't affect his status, didn't make him better or worse. But we are saying here, this what this scholar is telling us is that, but actually it is still better for him. You're saying didn't make him better or worse, but actually it is still better for him. Why? Because if something happened to him and this thing is indifferent, neither this way nor that way, then now let's just look at this thing itself. Existence itself is nobler than non-existence. So just the very presence of this thing that supposedly is indifferent is better actually because, yani, by virtue of what? By virtue of having being better than lacking. By virtue of existence being nobler than non-existence. Yani, by virtue of something being better than nothing. So neither is not a valid option because it still would come to the side of being better. And then saying it made him worse, that's more clearly that doesn't work. You can't say God got worse, so that doesn't work. So then what? Then means he got better? That doesn't work either, because he got better means really he was bad before. So no matter how you look at it, to say God changed or something happened to him is attributing deficiency to him.
It seemed like to me, Shaykh, it seemed like that, what's getting me confused, I don't want to be saying, attributing better to the Creator.
Yeah. Meaning none of this works. Yani, none of it works. So we are already saying God doesn't even change. He doesn't get better or worse. We already have this position. So what if someone was to say, no, something could happen to God? You would say, no, how could something happen to God? That would mean he got better or worse. Then that one might say, no, don't mean better or worse only. Could mean neither. Could mean just indifferent. He didn't get better or worse, but something still happened to him. So what this scholar's teaching us is to say, but if something happened to him, and supposing that this thing were indifferent as you claim, just the mere fact that he has it is better than not having it. Because existence is nobler than non-existence, and having is better than lacking, and something is better than nothing. So having it would actually be better. But then if you say better, that would mean he was previously worse. But having it would be better, so you can't say it's neither, because it's going to still wind up going to the side of being better. But saying God he made him better would mean that he was before that worse. Is that clear?
The word I'm looking at can be better or worse, and the person said neither. So the person saying, like to me, the person saying that you attribute the imperfections to the Creator. He's saying if he got better, that means he was worse. If he's saying that he was worse, he got better, then it's imperfection to the Creator, regardless how would you put it.
Yes, correct.
Okay, that's make sure.
So the whole issue here is really how to debunk the neither part. Because better or worse is easy. If he says God got better, that would mean he was worse before, so that's invalid. If he says God got worse, that would mean you're confirming imperfection for him now. That's not valid. So better and worse are both invalid. So what if he says neither? Not better nor worse. So what the Shaykh is, this author is telling us here, this scholar that the Shaykh is citing, he's saying, even if you said it's neither, it still is going to wind up meaning better because he has it. You said it happened to him, so he has it. If he has it, that's better than not having it, because having is better than lacking.
Got it. It took a while, but I got it now.
And then if you say he got better, then it's still going to go back to say, so then you're saying he was worse before. So then we'll go back to the previous thing. So it's all invalid. The only thing that's valid is to say the Creator is eternal and unchanging.